Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one. I'm the Metal Junkie, and today I'm going to be ranking all 10 Trivium studio albums from worst to best. It's been a while since I put out a video, my first of 2025, but there's more to come, more rankings, more album reviews, and stuff like that. So stay tuned, like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything in the future. And yeah, just getting into Trivium, one of my favorite bands, top 10 band for me. The first band I ever listened to that screamed back in like 2005, I think I caught these guys when they came out with the Ascendancy album. And yeah, so I've been listening to them for 20 years. I love how they have a range of sounds from thrash metal to heavy metal, metalcore, hints of prog, hints of power metal. It's just pretty awesome that a band like this can use so many genres, right? So every album has its own flavor, and yeah, they're a very unique band that I really love. So even if My Last Place is one of your favorite albums, don't get mad. I enjoy all these albums to a certain degree. I think the lowest I would rate it is like a 7 out of 10, their worst album. So I really do enjoy everything this band has put out to a certain degree. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the ranking. So for me, coming in the last place, it was a tough choice, but I had to go with Silence in the Snow. An album I enjoy, and this wasn't always my least favorite album, but after re-listening to all these albums back to back, this one is my least favorite. Coming off of Vengeance Falls, I feel like they really slowed things down in the tempo. We're not going fast at all on this album, and it's much more heavy. Now, I don't mean heavy like a death metal or anything like that. I mean heavy as in like the tuning and the tone of the guitars in that are really low on this one. As for the music itself, it's pretty much alternative metal mixed with heavy metal for the most part. And this is actually the only album where Trivium doesn't scream at all. Matt doesn't give one scream on this album. It was due to his vocals at the time. I think he had surgery or whatnot. So that's pretty interesting. Some really good tracks on here, though, like Blind Leading the Blind. Looking at the track list here. Blind Leading the Blind is a freaking amazing track. Breathe in the Flames doesn't sound like it's meant to be on this album. That sounds like it was meant for like the Crusade or something. It would really fit that album, but absolutely love those two tracks. And everything else is pretty good to great on here. I like Matt's vocals on here. It's almost like a power metal style to the way he's singing, especially in songs like Silence in the Snow. Love Pull Me Through the Pull Me From the Void. Yeah, everything's pretty decent on here. There's songs like Until the World Goes Cold. I find it's been overplayed. I kind of got sick of it. Even Silence in the Snow to a certain degree. It's not one I'm running back to listen to that often, but overall, a decent album. Coming up next at number 9, I got Vengeance Falls. Now, after Shogun and that album has had such praise and everything, they did In Waves, which, you know, had mixed results, and then Vengeance Falls came out, and I felt like they were going in the wrong direction when this album came out. I was really disappointed with this album at first. I've grown to like it more ever since its release, but at first, the only songs I really cared for were Brave This Storm and Strife, the two singles. I thought they were pretty great songs, but then I overplayed them and kind of got sick of them by this point. And now I find the more hidden gems on the album are better listens, like the songs you don't hear as often. This album was produced by David Drainman, the singer of Disturbed, and you can totally tell he was also giving Matt vocal lessons on how to sing higher and everything. And there's a lot of times on this album where I'm like, this is sounding more like Disturbed than Trivium, so that's another reason why this album is a bit lower for me. It's in the vein of, there's some thrash metal in there, but it's more straight up heavy metal this time around, I feel. And yeah, while there's not any real bad songs, I feel like sometimes the choruses just don't hit as hard as they should, or the other way around. The verses aren't that great, but we got a great chorus. I think Incineration, The Broken World is a freaking stellar track and easily the best on the album now that I'm sick of Brave This Storm and Strive. But yeah, To Believe, pretty catchy chorus on there. There's forgettable tracks like Through Blood and Dirt and Bone, Wake, The End Is Nigh. It's okay. So yeah, not a bad album. I think a bit better than Silence in the Snow, especially in terms of the guitars. Everything else is kind of on the same level as Silence in the Snow for me. but there is definitely some good guitar riffs in here. It has some speed to it. It's not as slow as the record that came after this, so it's a good enough time. Coming up next at number 8, I'm going with Ember To Inferno, the debut record from Trivium. These guys were so young at the time. Matt was only 17, just to goes to show, like, this is basically a high school band album. And in that regard, this is a friggin' stellar record. Really cool. It's thrash mixed with metalcore, much like Ascendancy. Just not quite on the same level as Ascendancy. But like I said, these were just kids, basically. And we still got great riffs throughout, great solos. I feel like the songwriting could have been tightened up a bit. But the riffs are there, you know, they had really cool riffs. So every song has sections I love, but sometimes the overall track is just a bit forgettable at times. But out of all the metalcore bands, if you're considering this a metalcore album, even though it's mixed with thrash, I feel like this is one of the best debuts from a metalcore band, because usually they're very bad. I listened to a lot of metalcore, especially back in the day, like around this time this album came out. And yeah, the debuts are not great from the metalcore genre, but this, I think, might be the best I've heard. It's very solid from front to back. Really not much filler on here. Like I said, great riffs throughout. You got songs like Pillar of Serpents, which they just redone, and it's still a fan favorite. Great track. This album has intensity, has a certain vulgarness to it. I just absolutely love it. It's raw. Doesn't have the best production, but serviceable. And it just really goes to show what they could deliver at such a young age. And they definitely step it up after this. So we'll get to Ascendancy in those albums. But this album, I feel like, is definitely one that's overlooked. People don't exactly give it a chance. And it doesn't deserve that. It deserves a chance. Like I said, the songwriting could have been tightened up, but we still get some catchy choruses on here and some badass riffage. Up next, at number 7, I'm going with the album In Waves. Now, this one and my number 6 are so tight, I had a really hard time choosing which came at number 7, but I went with In Waves. Pretty solid record. I didn't know what to think when it came out. Like I said, Shogun was such a big hit that this felt very different. And there's even stories out there that the production team and their agents and stuff told Trivium, tone it down, become a little bit more basic, because what you did on Shogun was too much for your fans, you know, which was total bullshit. So they made In Waves, definitely a step back, much more simplistic album with many different sounds. Like, this might be one of the most inconsistent albums when it comes to different variety of tracks and such. Like, you got In Waves and Dust This Mantle, which is more like heavy. And then you got songs like All of These Yesterdays, which is a great track, but you know, it's just so many different things going on this album. And I think the first half is much more strong than the second half. Of All These Yesterdays is probably the best song on the second half of the album, the B-side. But the A-side is pretty excellent on here. I really like the intro and In Waves. Dust This Mantle, man, I seen that live back when this album came out, and it hit so hard live. Had the whole crowd singing and everything. Was great. Very heavy. We got tracks like Black and Built to Fall, which I feel like those are songs that they made because they were told to simplify things, bring it down a level. And yeah, you get songs like Black and Built to Fall out of it, but still really great songs, just more alternative metal tracks. And again, this album is thrash mixed with alternative, and they threw in hints of metalcore in here where it was absent in the Crusade and Shogun, which was cool to see that return a little bit. But yeah, as I stated, the first half of this album is very solid. Skyline Severance is a banger too. I love the bass on that and everything. Paolo does a great job on that record. But yeah, man, the second half, like Caustic Are the Ties That Bind, Forsake Not the Dream, even Chaos Rings, I don't feel like they're quite on the same level as the first half of the album. So that's pretty much the reason why In Waves is in the place that it's in. Coming up next at number 6, I got What the Dead Men Say. Now, as I stated, this and In Waves are like equal. They're identical in rating. I have a really hard time to tell which I prefer, because I prefer this one, but for different reasons, I suppose. I feel like this album's more consistent in its songwriting and whatnot. I think there's only one song I don't care for on here. Bleed Into Me. I feel like that song is crap, but everything else is really good on here. What the Dead Men Say, such a banging opening track. And I like how they added in like that Gojira slides or pick slides or whatever you want to call it in this album. Like you get some on this song, you got some on Bending the Arc to Fear, which I'm like, oh, it's so badass. So this album is just really heavy. It has great production value. I think this might be one of their best sounding albums, to tell you the truth. I just love how the bass and everything sounds. It was just equalized really well and mixed excellently in the studio. Give them hats off to you guys for that. And I never heard The Sin and the Settings, What the Dead Men Say, and their last album, I'm blanking right now, In the Court of the Dragon. Those three albums are all very fresh to me because I haven't listened to them when they came out. You know, I fell behind on newer music, so when I was going through these last three, it was a real treat, but again, they're very fresh in my mind, and my placements might change over time. But yeah, badass record. I just feel like it's missing big standout tracks. Like, you know, everything's great, but nothing quite reaches the level of some of the albums that I'm going to mention soon. So that's why it's here, but very solid record. Sickness Unto You, Amongst the Shadows and the Stones. I love how that opens. It's pretty friggin' heavy. Reminds me of Shadows Fall or something. So yeah, pretty great record. I feel like their last three albums are all kind of in the same vein when we're talking about the tone and the style. They're back to doing alternative metal and thrash metal really well together, so I kind of dig this record. Coming up next at number 5, I'm going with In the Court of the Dragon, the last record that Trivium released. And very consistent record. Like I said, the last 3 records are all really good. They're putting the band in a great direction. You know, I feel like the fans are all back mostly, and perhaps they gain new fans from this record. And it's pretty damn heavy, man. There's times where I'm like, damn, that sounds like it could have been on Ascendancy. Like In the Core of the Dragon, especially A Crisis of Revelation. The riff in that, so good. Matt and Corey are amazing guitar players, man. Just so damn great. And of course, Alex Bent on the drums. He came in The Sin and the Settings and just breathed new life into the band. I'll get to that later, but yeah, he's great on this record too, especially with the song Fall Into Your Hands. Man, the drumming on that is insane. Probably the craziest drumming out of any Trivium song, to me anyway. I just find it's such, like I said, a breath of fresh air for the band. This is what they needed. And has like prog feels to it too, that song. And this album has some prog elements to it, especially with the songs being a little longer, most of them being 5 to 6 minutes long. So that's great. Little critique, I feel like In the Court of the Dragon is too bassy. Like I said, What the Dead Men Say did a great job of mixing that record. But this one, I find all the songs are good, except for the In the Core of the Dragon. I find it's way too heavy on the bass. That just could be because of the low-tuned guitars and everything together. But yeah, I feel like that could be fixed. But every other song is good, so it's just that one song that's affected by that. Maybe that's just a personal thing, but it is what it is. But yeah, just a really consistent record. Not one song I would remove, which, you know, most of these records do have a song that I don't care for, so they got that going for them. Feast of Fire, man. The guitar in that chorus, so damn catchy and cool. It's one I always revisit to hear that part. Like A Sword Over Damocles. A Sword Over Damocles. Excuse me. That song there is super catchy as well, the chorus and everything. So very, very solid record, man. From start to back. The Shadow of the Abattoir is just very different for the band. I like to see that a different side from the band. It's not a straight up thrash metal song or anything. It kind of takes you on a journey, which I really appreciate. And lastly, the Phalanx. I don't know how you say it. Phalanx, the last song on the album. Apparently that was written back in Shogun days, and they brought it back out of the grave and put it on this record, fixed it up. Killer track to end this record, and it's a longer one too, which again adds to those prog elements. So I kind of dig this record. I think it's pretty amazing if you ask me. Coming up next at number 4, I'm going with The Sin and the Settings. And as I stated, this was the first album going through all these, listening to them, that I haven't heard before. So this, What the Dead Men Say, and In the Core of the Dragon were all very new to me. And I was just blown away. I'm like, this is what I was missing. I mean, the last album I heard by Trivium was Silence in the Snow. And then while I enjoyed that record, I kind of lost faith in the band. I felt like they were going in a direction I wasn't fond of. But damn, they brought it back with this record. This album really feels like it's a bit of everything they've done up to this point. There's some Ascendancy in here. There's some Shogun, some Crusade, some In Waves, you know? I love that. They're picking from like sounds from all their career. You even get the newer sounds, like with the alternative metal from like Vengeance Falls and Silence in the Snow. We get a little bit of that in here as well, but it's done much better. Like for example, The Heart From Your Hate feels like a song that could have been on Silence in the Snow, but it's a banger. Like it would have been the best song on that record if it was on there. So for this more ballad type track, it's kick ass, and everything is so good on here. The Sin and the Settings, such a damn good song, and the ending to that song just hits home. The little breakdown they do and everything, heavy as hell and badass. And as I mentioned, Alex Bent, this is the first record that he came on, and holy shit, did he put this band back on track, man. Like, I feel like the guitars could finally step it up again like they used to be now that they have an excellent drummer. Because back in the day, they had Travis Smith, I believe his name was, on the first 4 or 5 records, and he was an amazing drummer as well, and I feel like the music matched that. And then when he left, they weren't quite on that level anymore, but they're back with Alex on this one, and hopefully he never leaves, because man, this band has been great ever since he joined. Beyond Oblivion is a badass track. Other Words. The Wretchedness Inside is like a freaking party metal track, man. I would love to see that one live. I love the bass on that one too. Beauty and Sorrow, The Revanchist, Thrown into the Fire was one I listened to like 1,000 times when I first heard this record. I just kept repeating it. Probably my favorite track on here, but it's hard to say. There's so many good ones. Sever the Hand, man. The breakdown and solo in that, masterful. But it's not all perfect. I feel like Endless Night should have been removed from this record. It doesn't fit, and it's one I always skip, which is unfortunate because the rest of this record is pretty much stellar except for that. And I don't think Betrayer is quite as good as everyone makes it out to be. I feel like I enjoy it, but at the same time, I feel like them trying to do this like death metal riff at the start and then change up the song, like it feels like it's trying to do different genres within one song, and it just doesn't quite work as good as I want it to. Like I said, it's still a decent track, but I don't think this should have got an award or nominated for an award and all this stuff. I feel like there's much better tracks on here, but again, just my personal opinion. But yeah, freaking badass record. Reaching my top 3, at number 3, I'm going with The Crusade. Now, a lot of people seem to hate this record, and I just don't get it, especially if you're a fan of all their other stuff. This one's straight up thrash metal. They dropped the core altogether. There's not very much screaming on here. I think there's only 1 or 2 tracks that added in, so much more straight up thrash metal. And I think they kill it in the thrash department. Again, the riffs, everything. Matt and Corey know how to make badass riffs, that's for sure. And yeah, I just love that, you know, Ascendancy, this, Shogun, we all get different flavors of the band. It's never repeating or getting stale, you know, they're always changing it up. And funny that everybody says this is like their Metallica record, which I have a really funny story about that. I don't know, 8-9 years ago, we were all 4-wheeling, me and my buddies, and I had a buddy on the back, and we had speaker playing, and one of these songs from this album showed up. I can't remember which one. It might have been Entrance of the Conflagration, or one of them anyway, was playing, and my buddy tapped me. He's like, what Metallica song is this? And I could not stop laughing. It was so funny because I've always heard people say that this is like their Metallica album, and a dude who didn't even know it was Trivium thought it was Metallica. I'm like, well, that pretty much says it right there, that it was true, that statement. And most of this record is pretty awesome. I mean, I love most of the tracks. Ignition, Detonation, Entrance, Unrepent, and Sadness Will Sear is a great little like slower heavy track, which I really like. cool lyrics too. Becoming the Dragon. Oh, I love how that one starts. And there's a few tracks on here that use 7-string guitars, which was different from what they done before, which, again, makes a different sound on here, which you never get bored. Contempt breeds contamination. I mean, the Crusade, there's some really good songs on here. There's a few cheesy moments, I admit, with Anthem, We Are the Fire. What else? The Rising. Like, I can see how people can see them as cheesy tracks, and I get it. It's just that maybe it's my nostalgia or what, but I don't mind them that much compared to some of their other cheesy ballad type tracks that they did or whatnot. I think these ones kind of work for the album, and I'm a big thrash metal fan, so I really enjoyed the Crusade, and I feel like it gets shit on way too much, and I just don't get the hate. I mean, if you're a fan of this band, you should like this album, to me anyway, because it's great songwriting. Coming up next at number 2, tough decision, but I ultimately went with Ascendancy from 2005. What a record. Practically perfect. I mean, I love this record. For one thing, I'm a huge fan of thrash metal and metalcore when done right. And this mixes the two, much like their debut, Ember To Inferno. But this time, they got the songwriting down to a T, man. They perfected it. Really badass riffs, really thrashy riffs, and more melodic, catchy choruses like metalcore does, with some breakdowns and solos mixed in there. And yeah, from start to back, from front to back, it's just an amazing friggin' record. And like I said, this was the record that I found Trivium, where I found them. I think I caught them on Ozfest, the year that this came out. They were only 19 at Ozfest, which is just crazy. And they were the first band I ever got into screaming. And I was just like, I hated screaming before this, but there was something about them that I was like, I don't mind them. And I got more and more involved with them. And now I listen to thousands of bands that scream. So Trivium is the one who started it all. And it's just too bad everybody hated them back then, especially like other bands, their influences. Much like Avenged Sevenfold, they were pretty much made fun of and bullied by their own influences and idols, which is a terrible thing. But I felt like they grew from that and, created amazing music out of it. So just like I said, everything's so great. Rain, badass riffs. Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr is a song they still play to this day live every time. I've seen it multiple times live and it never disappoints. So badass. Drowned and Torn Asunder is one that I really grown to appreciate later. I always liked it, but now I'm like, damn, that's such a good track. And everything on here is killer. A Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation was the song that got me into the band. That's what played at Ozfest, and I was just hooked. I had to pick up a guitar right after that and learn the riffs for myself. And that's what got me playing Drop D and everything. So a lot of nostalgia for this record. And just my own musical personal tastes really fit this record. I'm still a big fan of this style of metalcore mixed with thrash metal. I think they just pair really well. Just great riffs. Dying in Your Arms is a great little ballad track for here too. Like Light to Flies, really fast and hard to play, badass, man. Just, again, from front to back, Suffocating Sight. Can we talk about that track and how awesome the triplets and the riffage is on that? Just mind-melting, really, from front to back. So, not really anything negative I could say about this record. It's if you're not a fan of metalcore, you should still check this out because it's different from your typical metalcore. Anyway, it definitely has a style of its own, and adding in the thrash elements really helped. So one of my favorite records of all time. But for me, coming in the first place, I had no choice but to give it to Shogun from 2008. Many would agree that this is their best record, and I know it's a lot of people who aren't fans of Trivium still dig this record. They're like, well, I don't mind Shogun, but everything else is not for me. And there's a reason for that. The songwriting is just on another level. I remember getting this album when it came out and my mind was just blown. I was like, they really stepped it up with their guitars. They dropped the metalcore on the Crusade and again on this one. But we get a lot of thrash metal mixed with alternative metal. A little bit longer tracks. There's more of a prog feel to them when the way the songs are structured and the length of them. And it's just the solos are out of this world. It's very intricate guitar playing, cool riffs, unique. All these songs are stuff you never heard before. A lot of them are played on 7-string guitars, which again adds that another level or layer to the album. And honestly, going through the track list here, there's nothing bad you could say. Every track, Crusade, Goman, Torn Between Skyline, Charybdis. I never actually had to say that title out loud before, and that has always been one of my favorite tracks. Again, I got to see it live, which was so damn cool at the time. Down from the Sky was always a personal favorite, even though I kind of got sick of that one just from listening to it too much, but that's my own fault. But as I said, Throes of Perdition, Insurrection, The Calamity Makes Its Way. All these songs so damn good. Literally not a dull moment, not a song I wouldn't give a 10 out of 10 to. They're all 10s. They're all perfect from start to back. It's just the easily the best record that Trivium put out. And unfortunately, I think this was the last one with Travis Smith. And that's where you start to see the decline, where he left until Alex comes in. So he was the drummer. Everybody's playing at 100% capacity here. Corey, Matt, Paolo, and Travis. So Shogun. I even like the direction of on all the Asian culture attached to it and everything. It's really damn cool. So Shogun, easily first place in my ranking. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all 10 Trivium albums. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you drop your ranking down below in the comment section, or at least tell me your favorite album, your least favorite album. Do you hate this band? Do you not listen to them? Or do you really like them but haven't heard much from them? Let me know all that down in the comment section. Like I said, I plan on putting out more rankings and reviews within the next few days and weeks and whatnot throughout this year. So stay tuned, subscribe so you don't miss out. And that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, thanks for watching.